Greetings out there in YouTube land. Things have been so slow here in the workshop that I've been digging through my junk box trying to find some projects. Okay, I can't turn up any amps in my area to restore any vintage ones. My own amps keep working just fine, so there's nothing to fix. Customers are all busy Christmas shopping, I guess. So I'm resorting to the junk box here to keep me busy and keep me out of trouble. Okay, so I turn this up. It's a portions of an old RF signal generator that somebody got sick of looking at and just tore to pieces from the looks of it. But it does appear that we may have some decent parts here, particularly a nice power transformer. It's a nice heavy one. And I've got tube sockets and some other parts here. So what I want to do is build a Fender 5F1 chassis from these parts. Okay, now that should be a challenge, one I hopefully won't regret. But I've got a decent power transformer here. A 5Y3 I believe was in this socket, so I know that I've got the 5-volt filament voltage and the plate voltage to generate B+. And I think this was a 6J5 over here, so I know I got a 6-volt filament winding. So it looks like we might be able to salvage a actual functioning little guitar amplifier from all this. Let's get started. First, I'm going to have to map this transformer to find out what all of these lugs are for. Now here's a good example of the value of one of these ESR meters. First, I'm going to test a brand new 10 microfarad at 450 capacitor, and you see that a nice normal reading for it is 4.0. Now let's take a look at the otherwise just perfect looking can capacitor that was on that small chassis. And the capacitance values for it are 25 at 75, so that must be a cathode bypass capacitor. And then two 10s at 450, which are filter capacitors. Well, let's turn it over and see what we get. First, the first 10 reads 54. Remember that a new capacitor reads 4, so this is obviously way bad. Let's look at the next 10. 68, it's even worse. Let's look at the little 25 cathode bypass. It has no capacitance whatsoever. So as you can see, it's not a matter of shades of gray with whether or not these capacitors are bad. When they're bad, on this meter, they're real bad, and it's real easy to judge which ones are not usable and which ones belong in the trash can. Sadly, this is one of those. Well, I got it completely disassembled, and the transformer is mapped, so I know which lugs are responsible for which output voltages. I got 3 nice tube sockets. As far as leftovers go, their little chassis, what appears to be a potted transformer of some sort, the bad filter capacitor, what's left of all the coils that were used to oscillate the output tube of this at different frequencies, and a bunch of little small leftover parts. So now it's time to draw up a schematic and start constructing. One thing that's interesting is each one of those coils that oscillates at different frequencies has a capacitor trimmer at the end to fine-tune it. Quite an elaborate piece of equipment. It's a shame that it was all taken apart, but I'll tell you, I'd sure hate to try to put it back together now. Here's the faceplate for that signal generator. As you can see, it's a precision signal generator, series E200C. This is part of just a box of junk that I got like at a flea market years ago, and never considered that it would be of any use, but it looks like it may be. Well, I was rummaging through the old junk box and found some more parts that I can use. I can use this to connect the speaker to the amplifier so that then I can disconnect it and use remote speakers, can plug them into the amp, into this jack. Got a really nice indicator light. I'm not sure if this came off the signal generator or some other piece of equipment. This did come off the signal generator, and this prehistoric fuse holder did too. Then I got this really neat 1/4-inch jack with a spring-loaded lid. This came off a military radio. And so when the jack is not in use, you just let that cover it, and I guess no dirt can get in. Looks like a toilet seat to me. These came off the signal generator. There's some old chicken heads. Here's an old extra 12AX7 tube base that I can use. And this is one of those old Radio Shack, back when they were like 89 cents or so, 1 meg potentiometer I can use as a volume control. I'm going to have to cut it off a little shorter, I have a feeling. But, oh, and a couple handles, the metal ends for the handles for the cabinet if I make a cabinet. So it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. About all I'm lacking here is an output transformer. But I'm going to keep digging. Maybe I'll turn one up. Well, I found an old belly pan for a organ amplifier that I disassembled a long time ago, and drew an outline of a 6 by 9 inch chassis here that seems to have enough room for my 3 tubes, my power transformer, and this is to stand in for the output transformer that I don't have yet. But it looks like everything will fit, so now all I have to do is cut along these outer lines and then fold the sides in and make a nice rectangular chassis. Okay, now I've cut the outline out. I'm going to need to take a file and clean up these cuts and square them up. And then I can fold along these lines and make my rectangular chassis. Well, here's a chassis with the edges smoothed and machined for the tube sockets, the transformer, the controls on the front, power cord inlet, and the fuse holder. I just find it easier to machine these when the plate is flat like this and then bend it, rather than trying to wrestle around with some rectangular box in the drill press. Now comes the rather unpleasant job of bending the sides down to form a rectangular chassis. I don't have a sheet metal brake, so I have to come up with some alternative method to do this. Well, here's the chassis. It's all machined. Sides are bent in so that it is the traditional hollow bottom rectangular box. I've got places for the fuse holder, the power cord, the controls on the front, tubes. I'm going to, once I get a output transformer, I'll find a way to mount it over here, and then I think the speaker output jack should probably be right in this position. Okay, time to start installing some components and maybe even begin wiring. Here's a little helpful hint on how to make these rather large holes in the chassis for your tube sockets and for your controls on the front and rear of the chassis. Now there's all different methods, but the one I prefer and that really works well for me is when I use what I call Christmas tree bits. I don't know if that's really what they're called, but I think you can see why I call them that. And what it is a kind of rotating, really kind of a ream that as the deeper it goes into the hole, the larger the diameter of the hole. And you stop at exactly the stair step that makes the hole the size that you want. Okay, and I used it on this chassis and cut these holes in just a matter of minutes. So you may want to go to Harbor Freight and pick up a couple of these. I think you'll find they're very, very helpful. Well, the chassis is finished and ready for assembly. I had to order an output transformer, but I got the dimensions and prepared the mounts back here for it with the grommets for the 2 sets of wires. This is for the speaker output. And then I added flanges on either side here so that if I build a cabinet, I can put screws through here to anchor it to the floor of the cabinet. And the way they were made is a little unusual. I used right angle aluminum and I riveted it to the steel chassis, and then I made a little ear that comes around here, wraps around, and rivets to the left and right sides of the front and back, so that this corner right now has reinforcement and is rock solid. Well, that's about it, and now I'm ready to start assembly. Well, here's the chassis with all the components installed. Power transformer, speaker output, It's ready for the output transformer when I get it. This is the one part I had to order. I didn't have an appropriate output transformer. All the other parts on this are either from that signal generator or just some scrap parts that I had laying around. Even the metal for the chassis. We got the on-off switch, the pilot light, the volume control, and the guitar or instrument input. These are riveted in. This one had to be screwed in. On the back we've got our fuse holder and the grommet for the 3-wire power cord. If you look inside, everything is pretty well located and isolated and ready for the point-to-point wiring, especially after I get the output transformer. Okay, so it's all coming together real well. Well, I guess that about does it for part 1 of this video series, in which I turn a precision signal generator from the late 40s and maybe early 1950s into a pretty snazzy little guitar amplifier. Okay, and part 2 I'll finish the wiring and we'll probably end up testing it. Okay, so stay tuned. I'm waiting for parts for the output transformer, and once I get it, this thing should pretty well fly together and be ready to go. Okay, so I hope to see you in part 2. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.